This is teacher Valentina, and today I'll be doing a brief style and history overview of both manga and Miyazaki. So, Hayao Miyazaki is an incredibly well-known Japanese animator and director who helped create a variety of films and founded Studio Ghibli in 1985 with a co-founder, Isao Takahata. Miyazaki has stated that his influences include his childhood and also other friends' children, as well as classical novels and a lot of early manga, so the works of Sanpei Shirato, Soji Yamakawa, and Osamu Tezuka, who created Astro Boy and was cited as the founder or the father of manga. So Miyazaki's early work begins in Toei Animation, where he works on stuff like Future Boy Conan, which you can see here. That's an illustration and a still from Future Boy Conan. And he also directed and wrote for a number of literature and fairy tale adaptations. He would also work with his co-worker Yasuo Otsuka, who would follow him to Ghibli later, and also Isao Takahata, who would co-found Studio Ghibli with him. He also directed and did some storyboards for Castle of Cagliostro, Lupin III, Castle of Cagliostro, and also he would start the manga version of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which would be adapted into a Ghibli film later. So here you can see his attention to detail and his ink work, which is very delicate, and here you can see his watercolor style. Whenever Miyazaki sets out to make a movie, first he creates a mood board of sorts where he figures out characters and the aesthetic he wants for his movie to have. Later, he'll translate this to storyboards, so the storyboards dictate the narrative. So rather than in traditional movies where there's a script and then the storyboards, this time it's sort of the opposite. First, the storyboards will create the story, and they'll attach dialogue later. Later, this will be transferred to cells, but now this is patched up a lot in computer as well, so it's not quite as traditional as it used to be. This is an example of a cell, watercolor background or paint background, and paint on this plastic sheet that would go over and create the movements of the characters. And then it creates the films we see and, indulge in at the movie theaters or at home. This is just some examples of Miyazaki's animation style. You can see how expressive it is and how fluid, yet also how simple. And this is some watercolor sketch character design to kind of the final finished poster product. And here are some of his more well-known films. So that's Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service, Howl's Moving Castle, and The Wind Rises, which is his most recent movie. And Miyazaki has a focus on strong female characters, often who are more younger than older, a focus on natural living and the struggle between nature and technology, and also how to remain a pacifist in a violent world. Okay, so next we'll be focusing on how to draw just like Miyazaki. It's Miyazaki's faces that are incredibly distinct, so let's focus on that. So, like in anything, I would recommend starting off with a circle. I'm going to just move this a bit. Once you start off with that circle, Miyazaki's faces also have a roundness to them. So we're going to try and replicate that. The way he draws chins is fairly sharp, so once again, replicating that. He connects the ears right to the jawline, and he's always got this little type of inner ear design going on. Excuse my sketchiness, I doubt Miyazaki would ever be this sketchy. In order to draw the neck, he draws his necks fairly thin, and also quite long. Collarbones. Right, so next I would move on to the nose. His characters have quite a pronounced visible nose rather than most anime characters who would simply have it be more of a dot. He's got like a pretty prominent nostril and his characters have like a triangular type nose. Sometimes he'll even connect the lines like that to make a more full nose. Another thing that's pretty distinct is the eyes, just because of how simple they are and how they're more influenced by American cartoons. So this is definitely a more manga style of American cartoons, very reminiscent of Osamu Tezuka, who was his main kind of influence, or one of his influences. They're not too considering, most other anime. Something like that. Gonna do some touch-ups. He also does include just a little bit of the bottom lash line as well, but also not too much. The eyebrows are fairly close to the eyes. So they wouldn't go this far up. They would be about here. The mouths, sort of in the middle of the nose and the bottom of the mouth, the chin. Kind of circular blush. I'm going to touch up on some of the more sketchy lines. Keep the chin fairly pointy and the cheek kind of more roundish and more childlike, because he does like his child protagonists. For the hair, I've kind of just kept a very thin outline of the head. And his hair isn't incredibly complicated. There's not too much detail in his very detailed ink work that he does. But in his animation, primarily, he keeps it contained down to some strokes. To some strokes. And just like that, you've got a Miyazaki-styled character. So then you can fill in the eyes. So it looks more like that. For shading, you can just kind of very simply block off where the most amount of shade would be. So that would be about here, under the hair. A little bit of the hair. I would do it in a slightly darker shade. Something like that. I would fill in the cheek blushes. And ta-da! You're done. A Miyazaki-styled character.